Okay, cool. Thanks for coming, you all. This is really frightening up here. Okay. So my senior year of high school, the college board was in the process of changing their AP French curriculum and their exam. So then one day, instead of her usual lesson, my teacher gave us a pilot exam that the college board wanted to test. So I naturally didn't do it. Instead, I wrote an angry letter in the margin of the answer sheet to the college board expressing how angry I was at them for forcing all these tests on us, and it felt really stifling. And so then the next day, I got called down to the counselor's office, and I never get called down to the counselor's office, so I was freaking out a little bit. And then I was freaking out even more when I saw my French teacher in the room as well, and I thought I was going to get in so much trouble. I was going to get stern talking to and be too embarrassed to show my face in French class ever again. But thankfully, this wasn't the case. I had my French teacher for 3 years of high school, so she knew me really well and knew that I'd done well in her previous classes. But she was wondering why I was doing so poorly now. And I told her that, I just told her everything. I told her how, held back I felt by all the testing, and that I was, feeling, really defeated by it, and thought that school was, holding me back from reaching my potential. And then she shared her own frustrations with testing. And then I thought to myself, of course, how could I be so arrogant to think that I was the only one who felt the way that I did? And then she said she didn't like teaching to the test either, and that she'd rather have us watch French films or go to a French bakery than sit and do test prep. And then I asked my counselor why there was so much testing, and she said it was really political. And then my French teacher said to me, maybe if the students themselves spoke out against it, it would all change. So in education today, the people who are most directly affected don't have any say in shaping their own education, which is mostly the students, and teachers don't really have a big say in policy either. And so if you're watching the news, most of the time they're not talking to teachers or students, they're talking to business leaders and politicians who don't really have any classroom experience at all. And then there are groups like Teach for America, which claim to be social justice organizations, but are funded by corporations like Walmart. And even at the local level, there aren't really a lot of mediums for students to shape their own education. Most school districts don't have any students on their board. And most schools do have a student government or a student council. They plan prom and spirit days, and they don't really have any real power. But the people who do have the power, they've been saying the same things for years. They say that the United States' low test scores are really bad, and that we need to catch up, otherwise our national security is at stake. And their solution is to close low-performing schools and open up charter schools, replace a lot of teachers and faculty, and incorporate new standards. But after 10 years of that, because of No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top, the United States' international test scores haven't gone up at all. So it's obvious that what they're doing doesn't work. And the people who are making these decisions are making these decisions sitting in offices, looking at graphs of test scores and spreadsheets without actually engaging teachers and students. And so a lot of discussion about education will get really drowned out through policy and politics, and any real discussion about the students themselves often fall through the cracks. So, where was I going with that? Yes. So what we need is for teachers and students and parents together to start speaking out, to put a human face on the issue. And I think yes, I'm a terrible speaker. Okay. Yes, okay. So there's this climate activist named Tim DeChristopher, and he has this quote that I really, really like. He says, if our opposition, the structure of institutions and governments, can be said to have a weapon, by and large, their weapon is the tool of alienation. They use alienation to make people easier to exploit by isolating them from one another. Alienation breaks people's spirits, it breaks apart communities, and it breaks people apart from one another. So that quote gets me really thinking about how our education system is designed to divide people rather than bring them together. It's based on competition, so we compete for getting the highest class ranking, we compete for scholarships and college admissions. And even schools are being forced to compete against each other for funding now. And so the system's designed to have us work against each other instead of with each other. And then according to Tim DeChristopher, the only way to weaken that tool of alienation, everything that reminds us of our real connectedness, weakens that tool of alienation. And I think that students need to become more connected, and an easy way to do that is by telling our stories and experiences, because it brings students together and it shows adults the students' perspective on education. So I have another quote. Where'd it go? Okay, sorry. Okay, screenwriter Charlie Kaufman, he has this quote that says, "Say who you are, really say it in your life and in your work. Tell someone out there who is lost, someone not yet born, someone who won't be born for 500 years. Your writing will be a record of your time, it can't help but be that. But more importantly, if you're honest about who you are, you'll help that person be less lonely in their world, and that will give them hope. It's done so for me, and I have to keep rediscovering it. There's profound importance in my life. Give that to the world rather than selling something to the world. Don't allow yourself to be tricked into thinking that the way things are is the way the world must work." So like, for example, for me, everyone always complains about school, but at the end of the day, they still go to class, they still take their tests, they still do their homework, and that's not something I could do or understand. And so it's hard to describe like the immense isolation and loneliness that came from that, from seeing like everyone around me who seemed to have it figured out but me. And so, but I figured with over 50 million students in the United States and even more around the world, I couldn't be the only one who felt that way. And so I decided to make a film about it. And once I started like speaking out how the education system was affecting me, people from all over the world started contacting me, sharing similar experiences, and even old friends contacted me. So like one of the best students in our high school, one of those people who I thought had it all figured out, told me how school was damaging to her physical and mental health. And another friend shared how the stereotypes of being a racial minority affected her. And even my college roommate was struggling and said that he'd be transferring to university closer to his home. So like after I started doing that, I no longer felt alone, and that's what a story can do. And so I'm about to show a clip from the film that I related to a lot. It's about this young woman in Florida named Louise who dropped out of school in 10th grade because of testing. Nope. Where am I going? What is going on? Maybe not.
It didn't make sense to me. And I couldn't do it anymore. I remember I brought it up to my mother like months earlier that I wanted to drop out. And she told me that she wouldn't allow it. Even before Christmas break, I got a letter, or my mother got a letter in the mail saying that even if I had a perfect 4.0 GPA for the entire year, I had missed so many classes that I was going to be retained in 10th grade. And so there was absolutely no way I could have spent 5 years in high school. And my mother, when she got that letter, she, I guess it kind of finally hit her, where it's not like I wanted to drop out to be lazy or drop out to go have fun or anything like that, but that I was unhappy here. And so she got that letter and she finally agreed to let me go.
Another example that was one of the most powerful examples of a story in the film comes from Chicago. I interviewed a group of students from Gage Park High School, which is on the south side, and 94% of their students live in poverty in an area that's full of gang violence. And so these kids, they came and they told me about their school. They told me how when a student was shot and killed across the street, the school didn't say anything about it. And they told me that when a male student raped a girl during lunch, the school didn't say anything about it. And a week later, when 2 different male students raped another girl in 6th period class in the music room, the school still didn't say anything about it and continued to do nothing about these safety issues. So this is clearly not a good environment to learn in, but the school will do everything it can to increase its low performance on test scores. The students will get calls at home reminding them about upcoming tests that they should prepare for. And instead of field trips or experienced teachers with small class sizes, they get constant test preparation and worksheets. And none of this is the school's fault, but like the state and federal mandates that put them in a position where their students' test scores are more important than their lives. And these are like the consequences when our political leaders just focus on the data. But sharing these stories is just the first step. The system is designed to cut students out of the decision-making process, and so we need to find alternatives outside the status quo to express our dissent. And it has to be something specific to you and your talents that only you can do. So I decided to make a film because it's something I've been doing since elementary school. And it was my first time making a documentary, and it was really challenging. But it was challenging logistically, conceptually, and as someone who's really quiet, it was challenging becoming vulnerable in front of so many people. But I learned a lot during it, and like real education doesn't happen unless you're challenging yourself and pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. And for like me and a lot of other students, that usually doesn't happen while you're sitting at a desk. And like education is really hard, both like climate change and income inequality and endless war. They're not problems that can be solved with like a simple solution. Like there's no one solution to solve these problems that you can bubble in. And so we can't wait around for leaders to solve them for us anymore. Yes. And then after I talked to those kids at Gage Park High School, one of them came up to me and he asked me what I thought after hearing everything they said. And I told him how I was like shocked and angry and like really depressed, because coming from like privilege, what they were talking about was like unfathomable, and I couldn't like imagine stuff like that happening. And then he looked up at me, and then he said, when I look at this school, I have no hope. But while he might not have hope, him and his students give me an incredible amount of hope, because they actually ended up boycotting a voluntary NAEP test that they were forced to take, and have since started organizing their community to make their school a safe place to learn. And so, yeah. And so this is another quote by Charlie Kaufman. I like him a lot. Okay. He says, what I'm trying to express, what I'd like to express, is the notion that by being honest, thoughtful, and aware of the existence of other human beings, a change can happen in how we think of ourselves and the world, and ourselves in the world. We are not the passive audience in this messed up power play. We don't have to be. We can say who we are. We can assert our right to existence. We can say to the bullies and con men, the people who try to shame us, embarrass us, flatter us, to the people who have no compunction about lying to us to get our money and our allegiance, that we are thinking, really thinking about who we are, and will express ourselves, and other people won't feel so alone. So we're starting to see a resistance form against like this corporate education reform. Teachers in Seattle and Chicago have been boycotting testing. Students in Providence, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, Chicago, Newark are starting to form student unions. And they're like college students who are starting to educate their peers about Teach for America and tell them why not to apply. And parents are starting to opt their children out of testing. So people are starting to speak up. And as students, I think it's time that we need to stop following the direction, instead take our own initiative, and that we need to stop answering someone else's questions, but instead ask our own. And I think if we do that, we can change not just the education system, but the entire world. So thank you.